It's Easter, so we're making some homemade hot cross buns. These are made with an enriched Tangzhong dough and are full of soaked fruit, spices and sugar. They're soft, fluffy and glazed with sticky golden syrup. Here's how we make them. Before making the dough, we need to soak some fruit. So here I've got 140 grams of sultanas and 40 grams of currants. I'm going to soak them in 250 ml of black tea. All we need to do here is pour this tea over the fruit, give them a stir and let them soak for 1 hour. Next we need to make the Tangzhong. To do this we add 25 grams of strong white bread flour into a small pan with 50 grams of whole milk and 50 grams of water. We give it all a whisk to combine, then cook over a low heat until we get a thick paste like when you make a roux. This is an Asian technique and it gives bread a fluffier, softer texture and extends the shelf life. So you want to make sure to stir it almost constantly so it doesn't stick, and then when it's done you'll end up with something that looks like this. Then we place the Tangzhong into a bowl and let it cool to room temperature before using for our dough. Right, to make the dough we add 500 grams of strong white bread flour into the bowl of a stand mixer with 8 grams of instant yeast, 55 grams of light brown sugar, 8 grams of sea salt, a teaspoon of skimmed milk powder, a large egg and an extra yolk. And then I've got a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of ginger, half a teaspoon of ground allspice and a quarter teaspoon of ground nutmeg. I'm going to grate in the zest of 1 large orange. Then I'm going to add in the cooled down Tangzhong and 190 grams of whole milk which I've warmed in the microwave to 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Now we're going to use the dough hook to mix the dough on a medium speed until it's smooth, which will take 4 to 5 minutes. You might need to just scrape the bowl down occasionally with a dough scraper so you don't get any dry bits of flour. Once our dough is smooth, we're going to gradually add in 55 grams of soft butter and then continue mixing on a medium speed until the dough passes the window pane test, which will roughly take another 5 minutes. The window pane test is a way to check gluten development in dough, and all you do here is stretch some of the dough between your fingers. If it stretches thin enough that you can see through it, it's ready. If it doesn't, you need to keep mixing. Now that our dough is finished mixing, we need to drain the soaked fruit through a sieve, then add it in, along with a tablespoon of mixed peel. Now we need to mix the dough on a low speed to evenly incorporate the fruit. Sometimes it's easier just to start the dough off by hand and then finish mixing using the stand mixer. Then once the fruit's all mixed into the dough, we're going to cover it with a tea towel and let it sit at room temperature until it's doubled in size, which will take between 1 to 1.5 hours. Next we're going to knock the dough back, then tip it out onto a lightly floured surface. Then we're going to use a dough scraper to divide the dough into 12 equal pieces. Each one should weigh around 100 grams. Now we need to shape each piece of dough into a ball. To do this, we pat the dough down slightly and then bring the edges into the middle. Then we flip the dough over and use cupped hands to shape it into a tight ball. Then we flatten the dough slightly with our hands and then place onto a lined baking tray in 3 rows of 4. Then once all the buns are shaped, we cover the tray, then let them sit at room temperature until they've almost doubled in size. This will take another hour or so. Now we need to make the paste for the crosses. To do this, we're going to mix 3 tablespoons of plain flour with enough cold water to make a thick but pipeable paste. I like to start with 2 tablespoons of water and then just add more in if needed. And if you make it too thin, just add a bit more plain flour in. It should look something like this. Then we transfer it to a piping bag and set it to one side until our buns are ready. Whilst the buns are proving, we also need to preheat an oven to 180 degrees Celsius or 356 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the buns are ready, they should just be touching. Then we need to brush them with egg wash, which we make by whisking a large egg with a teaspoon of milk. Then, before baking the hot cross buns, we need to pipe the flour crosses on top. The easiest way to do this is to pipe straight down each row, and then turn the tray 90 degrees and go the other way. Then once we've piped the crosses on top, we bake the hot cross buns for 20 to 25 minutes until they're a deep golden brown all over. Whilst the buns are baking, we can prepare a glaze. I'm using 75 grams of golden syrup and 25 grams of butter, which are just melted together, but you could use jam, marmalade, or a sugar syrup. As soon as the buns come out the oven, we're going to brush them with the glaze whilst they're still warm, and then let them cool completely. You want to be generous with the glaze to give them a really shiny finish. And that's how to make a batch of my Tangzhong hot cross buns. The full written recipe can be found on my blog saltbuttersmoke.com. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week for another recipe.